So starting the test drive in the Silverado EV, not used to having a battery this big, so even though I have 20% charge left, I still have a rated 103 miles on the battery here, which is, it's just impressive to me. So far, driving dynamics are pretty typical of an EV. I have the one pedal drive on, so nothing out of the ordinary there. I'm liking it so far. Now, parking this truck, I feel like is not as easy as the Hummer because you don't have that four-wheel steering, but maneuvering it in general is not as cumbersome because you're just not in that big of a truck, if that makes sense. This feels much less huge as opposed to that Hummer. But we're gonna give it a little pull here and our foot to the floor. So a very impressive pickup in terms of the truck in general, of course, and just the pull it has. And I love this, and I said this about the Blazer EV I reviewed a while ago. I love that it shows me how much energy I'm using as I accelerate and as I just kind of cruise down the interstate here. So I can see the efficiency in real time. I have a Mustang Mach-E, and I can kind of see over time how many, I guess, kilowatt hours I'm using per, I don't know, per mile or something like that. But here I can actually see in real time what's being used, which is pretty neat. Now, ride quality is pretty good. I just passed that semi as I get off the interstate here, and I didn't feel it sway at all. Now, of course, this is a heavy beast with this big of a battery and this big of a pickup. So I wouldn't expect it to be thrown around like a Chevy Cobalt or a Mini Cooper or something like that, but still pretty impressive that I didn't feel it. And the road noise is pretty impressive. Even though this is an EV and it's quieter than a gas-powered truck would be, the sound acoustics in here is still pretty remarkable in terms of just the road noise and wind noise. And really the only sounds I'm getting is from what I showed earlier, which was that chair and all that is still in the bed of this truck. But I think if you plan on getting 500,000 miles out of this, which it's very possible, especially if you charge it right, keep the battery maintained, things of that nature, you see why it might be an $80,000, why it might be worth at least an $80,000 truck for the right buyer. It has all the technology that you would expect, honestly, from a typical 2024 luxury vehicle, let alone this one being a work truck. You have the wireless CarPlay, Android Auto, adaptive cruise, a power tilt and telescoping steering wheel, the dual zone climate controls. It's just an impressive truck, other than, I guess, the luxury amenities. The tech amenities are here, but the luxury, it almost doesn't go with this truck for it to be a work truck and for you to have the tech that's in here, even though it is an EV. But this is really one of the more basic vehicles available, I think, because with the Cybertruck and the Rivian and all of that, even the most basic trim levels are still meant to be luxury vehicles. Even with the Lightning, you have the more basic models, but there's just something about this Silverado that feels like a typical work truck. But then again, you have all the tech advantages that you would expect in the highest trim on other vehicles. But most importantly, at least for me, having 450 miles of range is just fantastic for a truck like this. And honestly, for me, 65 or 70 grand for this, I wouldn't mind spending that. 80, I think, is a bit high. Not necessarily for the truck, but just for my pocketbook if I were to get another EV. Because you can get a Hummer for almost 100,000 now. Of course, you're not gonna have that range. You're gonna have a lot more features though. And it's more, I guess, less of a practical vehicle. But for the right buyer, again, I think this is gonna be something special. And this will bring me to the end of my review of this 2024 Chevrolet Silverado EV work truck.